Hey everybody, a film fan 108 here, and welcome to the pickup video for February of 2025. This stack is going to be a good one, man. Hopefully you saw the January pickups. If you did, hopefully you found it entertaining enough to come back for the February ones. And if you haven't, check it out because there was definitely some tasty 4K upgrades that I got for the collection. But this time around, ooh, we got some titles we're diving into, baby. We definitely do. So let's get into it with the first and finally getting my copy in the mail because, well, Lord knows, patience does pay off, but damn, they took their sweet ass time. They really did, man. And I love this series so much. And I needed to get my hands on the next installment. Damn glad that I pre-ordered it. Damn glad that I have it in my hands. And it was worth every single second, man. And that is In Search of Darkness, 1990 to 1994. A journey into iconic 90s horror. Yes. Oh, look at this, man. The great slipcase here with all of the iconic 90s horror goodness, man. Very, very sweet. And on the inside, oh, so good, man. So good indeed. Creator VC, man. They definitely know how to do it, baby. Oh, indeed they do. I love making of documentaries. I am a big fan of it. I like to know how the stew was made, so to speak, right? And these creator VC ones are some of the best out there, hands down. If you've seen the In Search of Darkness 80s ones, all three of those volumes, I own all three of them in the collection. Outstanding. And I was always hoping that they would get to the 90s. And I know if you're a horror lover and thinking of a decade of horror that's really worth it, the 80s sounds more sexier than the 90s, right? Because I think we look at the 90s and I think we say to ourselves, really? Come on, man. And I think you'd be wrong on that. I really think you would. And look, the 80s have a hell of a lot more plentiful titles and the starting of a lot of new and exciting franchises and some really great, powerful horror movies that are still defined by the genre to this day. No doubt about it, man. But if you were really to sit down and dissect the 90s, the way that this documentary does, you start to find yourself thinking, you know what? The 90s is actually kind of underappreciated, undervalued, overlooked, so to speak. And I was so glad when the In Search of team decided, hey man, we're going to do the 90s, because I was 100% on board. Because if it was anything like the 80s ones that they made, I knew it was going to be bang on, and damn was it. And I was a little unsure at first, because what this documentary is basically it's going from 1990 to 94. So it's not doing a whole decade's worth. It's just doing a certain small time period in the 90s and focusing on that one little bit of time. And I thought, is it going to be as satisfying? Is it going to be as entertaining? Only focusing on a few years feels like maybe they're shortchanging themselves. But in fact, by doing it the way they're doing it, I think they're able to focus more on each year and on far more ranging topics and give more time to certain films that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been that way. And so I really do appreciate the approach that they went here, and I think they did a great job, man. This documentary is damn near 6 hours long. 6 fucking hours, man. It's wild. And I gotta tell you, man, watching this, it just flies by. I watched it in like two parts, and before I knew it, 3 hours were just out the window. And I was like, holy shit, man. It just was just going by so fast because you're enjoying the documentary, you're enjoying the talking heads, you're enjoying the deep dive into certain horror topics that were happening in the early 90s. And I thought, man, there's very few documentaries, truly, that are incredibly engaging. Sometimes you'll get a great documentary and it's really good, but there's some boring parts in there. There's moments where you're like, oh, okay, I can kind of skip through this one. No, 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 man. Every single part of this is incredibly entertaining, fascinating, and gives you the deepest dive possible. And I can't thank them enough for this, man. I really can't. It's just way, way too good. And it dives into the idea of franchises from the 80s coming over to the 90s, the idea of newer horror icons trying to come up, TV miniseries, horror TV shows like Tales from the Crypt coming to prominence, you name it, right? And they do everything all so well, man, to sort of give you the backgrounds of the 90s, going from the 80s, the mentality, and how society was changing along with the horror movies of the time. And damn, I just loved every minute of it, man. I really did, dude. It's so good. And look, we can always quibble about, well, they didn't show off this movie or that movie. There were certain ones specifically that I was like, oh man, I kind of wish they had showcased this movie at this certain year, that I was like, oh man, that would have been cool. But unfortunately, look, with a documentary like this, you can't satisfy every single movie for every single person. And if you could, this documentary would be damn near 10 to 12 hours long. Which, by the way, I'd totally be happy with it. Okay, I really would. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes you gotta sacrifice a little bit here or a little bit there. But at the end of the day, they really do give you a great picture of the early 90s and what was going on at the time and the movies of that time, and looking back on them in this great nostalgic way that they do so damn well, man. And for me, around this time, 1990 to 1994, I mean, I was still in my younger years, heading into my teen years. And so these are movies that I would slowly find, slowly appreciate, and really take a liking to. And so around this time, this was really my bread and butter, man. And going back and really looking at these movies and getting them reappreciated really made me feel good that I am a child of the 90s, and also the fact that these movies deserve just as much love as the 80s ones do. Now, are they as iconic as some of the 80s ones? No, not necessarily, but I think they still have a lot of worth and a lot of value. And looking back on them, you're like, oh man, yeah, this movie is so great, and this movie over here, man, and it just makes you want to revisit the 90s. And as somebody who looks back very fondly on the 90s, I'm totally cool with it, man. I really am, dude. I truly, truly am. It's such a great documentary. And if you are even mildly interested in 90s horror, or even the horror genre in general, and really want a great deep dive analysis of it, In Search of Darkness is where it's at. And 1990 to 1994 is such a unique look at a time period between the big boom of the 80s and also where the later 90s will take the horror genre. And this was a time period where horror really didn't quite know where it was at. It didn't quite have a voice. Because once you get into the later 90s, we're dealing with Scream, we're dealing with a lot of the meta style stuff, teenage horror, more up and coming prominent franchises, new ones to really excite audiences. And 1990 to 1994 is that era where we didn't quite know where we were going. And so it does feel, as the documentary talks about, kind of a lost decade of horror in a lot of ways, because a lot of these movies, I think people got tired of certain franchises and movies that people just decided, fuck it, I'm not going to pay attention to them. And movies that felt like they didn't really get the love that maybe they should have back in the day. And so now to have this documentary to really give it that spotlight and that showcase is really wonderful, man. It truly is. And I am so damn glad, man. I pre-ordered this like a motherfucker. When it went on pre-order, I knew it was mine fast. And they still got to make the documentary, and they got to interview the people and make the discs and everything like that. So in the whole process of it all, it took probably close to around a year before I actually ever got the disc, but I'm so glad that it's in my hands. I'm so glad that I finally have it, and add another In Search of Darkness to the shelf, man, because it's so damn worth it. I cannot wait for 1995 to 1999, man. I mean, this documentary was really great, but talk about what's really coming in the latter half, even better, baby. In Search of Darkness, man, they know how to do it, and they do it oh so damn well, man. Horror represented in all the right ways. And the next title that I picked up, who doesn't love little 4K upgrade goodness? Especially when it's Arrow. Even better. Yes, man. Space, horror, and vampires. Something tells me it ain't going well for the human race. Certainly not, man. With Life Force. Yes, the 4K Arrow UK edition, man, with the nice exclusive slipcover. Very nice. And the inner artwork, definitely interesting. That's for damn sure. The cinematic sci-fi event of the 80s. You bet your ass, baby. Yes. Now, I did have this in the collection. I had the Arrow Blu-ray edition, so I just upgraded to 4K, but still being Arrow, I decided to keep it in the family. Yes, I did, man. And I really like this bonkers movie. And you look at a movie like this, and you think to yourself, man, this is the same guy that did Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Yeah, but I've always liked Tobe Hooper, and he really is and will always be one of the iconic horror directors of all time, man. I mean, you just look at Texas Chainsaw Massacre alone and think, we're not worthy, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. I mean, you could easily do that, because hands down, just that movie alone, he becomes one of the all-time greats. But you think of Poltergeist and Invaders from Mars and The Mangler and Salem's Lot, and you think of so many great movies that he directed, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and you think this guy has a very eclectic taste to him. He loves horror, but he loves doing it in different ways. You look at a movie like Texas Chainsaw Massacre versus a movie like The Funhouse versus a movie like Eaten Alive, and you're like, okay, he likes horror, but he likes mixing it up. And I feel like for a lot of directors, I think that's what keeps them interested within the genre. To do the same thing constantly, to do slashers all the time, or to do ghost stories all the time, or to do alien movies all the time, I think you get tired, and I think you get a little complacent. And what I like about people like Wes Craven or a Tobe Hooper or some really other greats in the genre like an Alfred Hitchcock, the fact that they never got held down to the same thing within the same genre. They were always mixing it up and doing something different and unique and something to keep the audience on their toes, man. And that's really where Life Force comes in, because god damn, man. This is unlike any Tobe Hooper you've really seen. It's basically about these astronauts, and they find these, looks like human bodies in stasis, and they bring them back to Earth only to find out that they're space vampires that instead of sucking blood, sucks the soul and the life energy out of them, man. The life force. Yeah. And boy, we just can't leave well enough alone, can we? And it always bites us in the ass. And this is no exception, man. This movie is absolutely just insane and out of its mind and just crazy and wacky and, yes, all over the place, but damn is it fun, and it's entertaining and wild and incredibly imaginative and creative. The special effects are second to none. You think of those old school practical effects, especially when they're sucking the life and the soul out of the people's bodies and they just look like these withered husks. It's so good, man. And the acting is great. Steve Railsback is really great as the main astronaut here. Matilda May as the main space vampire bad guy, so to speak, villain. She is absolutely mesmerizing, and you can't take your eyes off her. I mean, mind you, she's naked most of the time, so take that for what it's worth, but there's a beauty and there's a haunting quality about her that instantly just captivates you to her. And no wonder guys would want their soul sucked from her. Can't say I'd resist, but oh man, it's just a really just balls out insane movie that I can't believe got made, man. But you gotta understand that this was made by Canon, and they were doing some wild action movies and sci-fi films, and they were just throwing spaghetti at the wall like crazy to see what the hell stuck. And they made a deal with Tobe Hooper, like a 3-picture deal. This was one of them. And I can just imagine Tobe Hooper coming in and be like, yes, space vampires, and they suck the soul out of people, and there's naked people all over the place, and all crazy wild special effects, and all kinds of money that's going to be spent on screen. Space vampires. So you're going to write me the check, right? Oh, man. But movies like Life Force just cannot be made anymore, man. I mean, with the way that money is handed out with these studios and the millions upon millions, hundreds and 200s of millions of dollars that are given to these big studio movies, nobody would ever take a gamble on something like Life Force, ever. They just wouldn't, man. And that's why there's something really special about stuff back in the 80s and even the 90s, where it felt like you had a great idea, and if you could make it for a certain budget, boom, here's the money, let's go, baby. And this is a prime example of it. It truly is, man. And I just think to myself, this is a great time capsule of what it was like making movies back in the day, in the 80s. And cocaine's a hell of a drug, man. It truly is, dude. Oh, boy. Look, there's not many great, long-lasting space horror epics out there. There really isn't, man. When you think of movies like that, you easily gravitate towards Alien, and I totally understand it. And there was all of the Alien ripoffs that came out, and some of them were good, and some of them were not so good. And of course, you think of Star Wars and all of the ripoffs that happened with that, and so on and so forth. And Life Force feels like a best of the both worlds scenarios. It's aping off of some of the more popular stuff that came out, but yet doing its own thing at the same time. And I really appreciate it, man. Look, it's bonkers, it's wild, it's crazy, it's all over the place. But there's something genuine and unique and charming and kitschy and campy about it that I think remains something that will forever be everlasting for a lot of fans out there, man. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but for me, when it comes to horror and the many kinds of horror that I enjoy, naked chicks sucking the souls out of unwilling participants, you could do worse. And the next title I picked up, talk about a movie that is definitely a child of the 90s. That is for damn sure, man. And you thought The Matrix was innovative. It's got nothing on virtuosity. Yes! Oh, man. The Vinegar Syndrome release. Oh, very, very interesting, man. They warned us about AI, but we never listened. That's for damn sure. The very unique boxed release of Virtuosity. Look at that artwork, man. I gotta admit, when they announced this title, I was kind of looking at the artwork and I was a little not sure about it. But now having it in front of me, I kind of take to it a little bit more. At first I was not so sure about it, but this is one of those magnetic boxes right there, and it opens up. Look at that, man. That is cool. You got the booklet on the inside here, as Vinegar Syndrome always does. Very nice. Sid 6.7. Yes, man. And all the great pictures and articles talking about the movie, as Vinegar Syndrome always does. Very nice on that. You also, on the inside, get the good slipcover as well. And I really like this one, actually, that they're inside the VR headset and everything. I think that's a really cool design to it. I actually really like it a lot. And the artwork on the case itself. Oh, look at Denzel, man, with those piercing, dramatic eyes. So good, man. So good indeed. You gotta love a good Vin-Sin release, man, and this is definitely one of them. Now, I will admit, at first, I wasn't gonna pick this title up, man, and I thought to myself, I'm not so sure, man, because I thought maybe I could wait for a sale, the price was a little high, but then I realized, wait a minute, hold on a second. I have $5 off on my Vinegar Syndrome rewards, okay? And then, with looking for Mr. Goodbar that I got during the Black Friday sale, there was an issue with the disc, so they had to replicate a new disc and bring it out to the people who bought it, and they said, hey, here's an extra $5 coupon off for whenever you want to use it. Great, awesome, right? So I'm like, $5 off here, $5 off there, shave $10 off of this sucker, and already I consider it a deal, man. So I decided, what the hell, I'll go for it, and indeed I did, man. And I have not seen Virtuosity in a long ass time, man. Obviously, I remember watching it because for me, especially when Russell Crowe was starting to do bigger, high profile movies like Gladiator, you name it, stuff like that, I always thought, wait a minute, the bad guy from Virtuosity? That always kind of entered my mind, man. And I thought, okay, it's kind of cool, dude. And it's also unique for the fact that Denzel doesn't really do these type of movies all that much. And it's a really just interesting time capsule of two big name actors at a certain time in their careers doing this sort of blockbuster sci-fi studio movie, cheesy as it may have been, man. And the movie left enough of an impression on me that I remembered it, but it also didn't like cement it as like, oh my god, like this is a movie that needs to be seen and needs to be watched. It's kind of one of those movies that you watch it, it's cool, a little bit forgettable, and you kind of move on, man. But I knew I wanted to revisit it. And just the fact of the guy who directed it, directed Lawnmower Man. So this is the same dude that directed that outdated sci-fi movie and yet did another one in the same vein, man. And to me, I like the idea behind this movie where they're taking convicts, one specifically played by Denzel Washington, and they're doing these training simulations against this AI computer program, Sid 6.7, played by none other than Russell Crowe, very much eating up the screen in his own delicious ways, man. He absolutely does, dude. And boy, he's eating for all of us. He really is, man. And the idea that the creator of the AI program gets manipulated into bringing Sid into the real world. Sid is made up of all of these maniac, killer, serial style programs like a Gacy and all of these killers throughout history. And so he's even more dangerous than your average, everyday killer that's out there as it is. So now he's running around in the real world, and now the only person who really knows him and who has chased him down is Denzel. So we've got to get Denzel to get Sid and all of the sci-fi cheese that goes along with it, man. Yes, indeed it is, man. It's wacky, and it's definitely trying to ride that line between being fun and taking itself seriously, and sometimes it pulls it off, and other times it's like, really? But I had a fun time rewatching this, man, and I was thoroughly entertained, and I really love when you get really great actors that are kind of cheesing it up, man. And certain people give the movie a little bit more extra legitimacy than it normally would have. I mean, you think of Denzel Washington, and Denzel brings a great dramatic quality to this movie that if it was any other actor, might not have really worked. If you got anybody else other than a Russell Crowe to play the villain, yes, it's over the top as it is, but I kind of feel like maybe it would have steered more into parody. The idea that these two guys, this cat and mouse game that's happening between them, they give it a certain amount of dramatic, high stakes quality that keeps you glued to the screen, man. And look, good actors can do that, man. It isn't always possible, but when in doubt, if you could spread a little cash love around, you get people that definitely make your movie a little bit better. And indeed, they did, man. And look, it's not exactly the most high profile concept of all time, but you also have to remember back in the day, look, AI is not what AI is now, and cell phones and technology is not what it was then versus now. And so the idea seems kind of ridiculous now considering where we're at, but you gotta, again, I always say this, take yourself back to that time period in history when the movie was made and how innovative the idea seemed at that moment in time, and how, this could never happen. AI programs really coming to life, and really being a force to be reckoned with. Jeez. Boy, what a crazy idea that must be. Cut to, 30 years later. Not so far-fetched, man. Not so far-fetched indeed. And I just like the campiness of it, and I like how operatic and melodramatic the whole scenarios and the gravitas of it turns out to be, right? And the idea that it becomes personal for Denzel, and how Sid is just relishing in how to kill people and just enjoying every second of it. I mean, especially when he's in the club and he's trying to get people to scream in order to make music out of it, and he's like, scream, oh, scream, oh, and it's like, ah! it's like okay, man, we're going here, baby, and there's just a certain amount of fun quality, and okay, man, they were really going for it, dude, and they thought that this was gonna be like, oh man, this is really gonna grip people, and oh boy, people are gonna be really fascinated about AI programs and all the deviousness of it, and oh, what the possibilities are. Sure. Whatever, baby. Oh, man. You look at a movie like, as I said earlier, The Matrix, and The Matrix turned out to be something so vivid and imaginative and so crucial for sci-fi films going forward, and really felt like a turning of the page of where the possibilities of sci-fi could go, man, and the importance of that movie. And I kind of feel like you can't really force it. You know what I mean? It is what it is. And I kind of feel like Virtuosity was trying to be one of those innovators, and I don't really think it was ever really reaching those heights. But as far as an entertaining blockbuster sci-fi flick, action spectacle, it works well, man, and I really enjoyed it, man. I had fun with it, and that's all I'm really asking for a movie. I want to be entertained. I want to sit back and say, is this worth the money that I paid for it? And indeed it is, man, and it still is. And there's a certain nostalgia quality that I have for this movie, and it's for a lot of 90s movies out there, man. As I've said before, I'm a child of the 90s. Yes, I was born in the 80s, but I grew up in the 90s and all of the entertainment that came from that, man. And Virtuosity is one of those movies, kind of like with a movie like Congo that I also have from Vinegar Syndrome, where it's okay, it's a 90s movie. It's nothing special. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's nothing that is going to technically stand the test of time, but it was entertaining for me, and I remember having good times with it, and revisiting it brought me back to that moment in time where man, I really loved it, and it entertained me to no end, man, and I can't complain about that, man. I really can't. Cheeseball as it can be at times, over the top like a mofo, hey, as long as I'm smiling and having a good time, it's a win for me, baby. It's a win indeed, man. And this has so much great special features. I mean, by the way, the 4K presentation is really solid on this, man. But you also get commentaries, you get making ofs, new making ofs, where it's with Brett Leonard, the director, and it's with some of the producers and some of the actors and talking about the making of it. And even getting a really great featurette where he's talking to some of the special effects artists that made some of the screens, the AI stuff within the movie, and talking about making it and the difficulties behind it and the importance of it and what it meant for that time period. Interesting discussions, man, about this movie, and I really appreciated it, man. I really do. This movie is really nothing to be embarrassed about. It's not this high quality level of importance of a movie that really changed the shape of cinema. And that's not this movie, man. It's just fun and a great thrill ride, and you just go with it, man. And if you can do that, then you're going to have a hell of a lot of really good times with this movie. If not, man, you're going to be like, man, this thing ain't for me. And that's fair enough too, man. I feel like a lot of movies from the 90s are getting reappreciation slowly but surely. It's starting to happen, man. And it's so crazy to think about that. I mean, having big 4K editions of Demolition Man and Congo and Virtuosity and movies that are coming out on 4K soon, like Deep Blue Sea. And it's like, oh my God, man. Like, dude, the 90s are finally getting the love that they absolutely deserve. How fucking crazy is that, man? It took a long fucking time to get here, but we're finally here, man. And I am here for it. I truly am, man. I don't know if every 90s movie really deserves the deluxe treatment, but Virtuosity, a little unique film within a time capsule of a time period for sci-fi movies, hell, I'll take it. And the next title that I picked up, you know, those old socks that you put in the hamper. Don't underestimate them, because they could become your best friend. That's really sad. In Crust. Yeah, the Blu-ray of Crust with a nice little signature from Sean Whalen. Wait a minute, guys. You're probably thinking to yourself, yeah, Seth, that's all well and good, but what the fuck is Crust? And you wouldn't be wrong, okay? Now, I knew about this movie because I contributed to the Indiegogo campaign to get this movie made, man. Yes, this is one of those Indiegogo films that actually got crowdfunded, actually got made, and I have the physical copy in my hand, man. And this is a very unique and interesting movie. Directed by Sean Whalen, starring Sean Whalen, and it's basically about his character, Vegas Winners, who is a washed up child actor who operates a laundromat, lives in the laundromat, and yeah, his life is spiraling downward really, really fast. And he ends up making a friend with a sock monster that is made up of his bodily fluids. And all the while this is happening, his life is starting to turn around, right? Oh my God, there's interest in maybe him coming back to Hollywood, new girlfriend, new appreciation. But when things start to take a turn for the worst, the sock monster decides, well, I gotta protect my friend. So he becomes an enemy to others. And all the crazy, weird, wacky complications. Now, I know what I just said is like, okay, I'm fucking out, dude. And I get it, okay? It's weird. And I'm not even gonna mince words about that. It truly is, man. But there's something about this movie that I absolutely really like. And I liked it enough to crowd fund it and give it some of my hard-earned money, man. So Sean Whalen wanted to make this movie, and I think Sean Whalen wanted to make this movie because even though it's kind of weird and wacky, there is a personal story in here about a guy that once had a very promising career that is now on the outs, and the idea that has been forgotten by time. And just when things are looking up and looking better, perhaps it was better when things were not so great. And the idea that just because you're wanted again doesn't mean that that's necessarily the thing you really wanted in the first place, man. And so there is a great message within all the wackiness that this film has. But I thought it was really well acted. I thought Sean Whalen really did a good job. Very stripped down version of just a down and out loser, man. And he does a great job with it. I really like Daniel Roebuck in here playing his friend / employee who doesn't know the concept of stop drinking. He's great here. Really entertaining. I love Felissa Rose here. She's great in a very small role, but damn is she entertaining. I really like even seeing Alan Ruck in here, man, for a very small role. And I mean, they could have had a better hairpiece, but but hey, whatever, man. They were going for it, okay? Look, the truth is, I found the movie fascinating. To want to give it my hard-earned money, to want to actually see what this movie would be. And it turned out way better than it had any right to be, in all honesty. And, hey, I do like the weird sock monster. It looks cute and cuddly. And almost like a stuffed animal, you know, you'd buy at Target or some shit. Until you realize, oh, it's made out of, yeah, all of the... And when you do, you're like, oh, man. Oh, man, that's gotta be some really solid adhesive, baby. Oh, it really does. Oh, shit. Oh, and look, I've had my endeavors with socks a time or two in my lifetime, and I totally get where you're coming from. Maybe not that many socks, but wow. Oh, man. Look, it's got a nice campy quality to it, and I think if you're somebody like a Sean Whalen, and if you know who Sean Whalen is, I mean, definitely from movies like Wes Craven's People Under the Stairs, and he's been in episodes of Lost, and he's done little things here and there, man, you know, genre stuff. He's a decent actor, but I think for a lot of these B-movie style actors and actresses out there, the ones that are kind of washed up and the ones that don't really get many opportunities, they need to do crowdfunding. They need to do Kickstarter and Indiegogo to at least have an opportunity to get their projects made and have them become a reality, man, because they're just not getting the opportunities that they did once before, and this is a way to do it. And it was an original-ish idea enough for me, And it was fascinating enough that I decided I want to put my money towards it. And look, I have ended up putting my money towards a lot of crowdfunding endeavors before. I have, man. And look, the ratio isn't always perfect. And sometimes the final product, you sort of scratch your head thinking, dude, this is really bad. Like, why did I end up contributing my money to this? But then again, there's moments that are a really nice surprise and things that you're like, hey, I took a gamble on it, but it paid off. And this is one of them. It's not high concept cinema. All right, let's just lay it on the line here. It's not even close. And Lord knows it's not a big budget here. They shot it in black and white. But then again, I really love black and white. I'm an old school black and white fan that really digs that type of old school look, so I really dug it even more because of that. And when you're making movies like this, you're making it for pittance, man. That's what you're making it for, dude. And you're not technically getting rich off of this shit, but this felt like a passion project for Sean, and really something that really spoke to him as far as being an actor that doesn't get the opportunities anymore and wanted to tell a tale about somebody that is down and out but finds new purpose in life through new opportunities and sees a way towards a better life in a very peculiar way, man. And I do appreciate it, man. I really do. Movies like Crust are just bizarre and oddly charming and a real conundrum, but I'm glad that they get made, because movies like Crust really are not movies that many people are giving a chance to. And that's why crowdfunding is as important as it is, because these more odd, out of the way type of movies really can only be made through crowdfunding opportunities. And I decided to contribute to it, man. If you're looking for a oddly love bromance between a sock monster and a washed up child actor, give it a go. It's actually somewhat dramatic and heartfelt, funny, and really entertaining. Who would have thought? And last, but certainly not least, this actually came to my doorstep the final day of February. I had the haul, looked good, can't complain, and I thought this package was gonna come day or two later, no big deal. Nope. Decided to surprise me. And sometimes surprises can be really complicated. In The Crying Game. Oh yeah, baby. The Umbrella Blu-ray with the nice exclusive slipcover. Very nice. And the inner artwork on the inside. Ah, yes. Love isn't all it's cracked up to be. That's for damn sure, man. And look, I have not revisited The Crying Game in a really long time, man. It's been quite a long ass while since I've actually watched the movie. And there are certain movies out there, right, that whether rightfully or not, are defined by a certain image or a scene that just cements that movie for that one moment in time and can never escape it. And The Crying Game is one of those movies, man. In fact, I was doing a deep dive a long while back into the Oscars. And I was looking back at all of, like, for instance, like the Billy Crystal monologues, like the old school Oscar ones that he did. And he hosted the Oscars the year that The Crying Game was nominated. And almost every other joke was like, oh, the surprise in The Crying Game. I know you guys. Like, he was always sort of making a joke about the crying game and the surprise twist and everything, and I get it, right? Because that's the only thing that anyone could ever talk about with this movie. And I feel like the movie has been pigeonholed because of it. Now, X amount of years later, everybody is like, oh, the crying game, yeah. Ooh. And I think because it was such a controversial movie, because it was such a fascinating movie, because it was such a zeitgeist movie for that moment, that people totally forgot about the contents of the movie. They totally forgot about the performances. They totally forgot about the nuances and the story and the characters and the drama and the human element. All of it just went out the window for that one moment, for that one scene. And I think that turns out to be a shame, because any twist in any movie is ultimately going to be scrutinized and is going to be pigeonholed as the one thing that clinches that movie for what it is. And I now, so many years later, can now look at the movie with almost fresh eyes after, God knows, 20, 25 years since I've seen the movie, to actually now get a chance to just see it for what it is, for the movie they were trying to make, and did it succeed or did it not succeed. And basically the movie is about this guy played by Stephen Ray who is part of the IRA, and it's a Irish terrorist organization in a lot of ways, right? And they capture this soldier played by Forrest Whitaker. And they say, hey, we are holding you hostage until your group releases our guy. And when they do, you're going to be released, fine. Until then, we're going to kind of torture you and whatever, right? Well, Stephen Ray starts to get to know Forrest Whitaker, cares for him, has a back and forth, almost like a friendship. And it doesn't really end well, because eventually they got to kill him off. And Forrest Whitaker tells him, hey, this girl that I really like, if you ever get to where she is, please tell her what happened to me, and that I still cared for her and loved her, etc., etc. And so, cut to many years later, he's now in the area where she is and finds her and is kind of fascinated by her, kind of likes her, and doesn't really want to tell her the fact that he's the one that ultimately had to be the one to kill him. Because, man, I mean, to try to do that, to try to be the one to say, hey, I'm the one that killed your ex-lover, but yet I want to be your new lover, that's some complicated shit. man, that truly is. Thank God I've never been in that situation. See, you know what I'm saying, man? But what ends up happening is he really likes her and is taking her out on dates and is slowly really starting to get to know her. And then the twist happens. And then it complicates everything, right? And if you know, obviously. But he still cares for her. He still likes her. But this is all kind of weird and new for him. He's not sure what to really think or what to do or how to go about any of this. She has feelings for him. At the same time, his IRA buddies are coming back and saying, hey, you need to do this terrorist act for us. And you still owe us from abandoning us the last time. And if you don't, we're going to kill her. We're gonna fucking brutalize her and kill her, and it's gonna be on your hands. The blood's gonna be all over you. So now he's stuck between trying to help them, protecting her, loving her, but also not really sure about the feelings, and being caught in between all of this and the drama that goes along with it, right? And that's a lot to handle, man. Okay, that truly is. And after watching the movie, finally giving it another chance after so many damn years, this movie is way better than people gave it credit for then and even now. It's a really great romantic thriller with a lot of really complicated feelings for the characters themselves and for the audience. And it challenges the audience. It makes you say to yourself, do I still care about what happens with these characters even after all of the twists and turns that have happened? The fact that these characters have feelings for one another, but of who these people are, can I care about their feelings and about their relationship and how they're torn with one another? And I'll be honest with you, I really cared. I really invested myself in these characters and within the story. And you gotta remember, at the time that this came out, this was very taboo. Really taboo, man. I mean, think of having to try to have a main character that you sympathize with who is in the IRA, a terrorist organization that I have to follow the story along with. That's complicated. Then on top of the trans issue, which at the time this movie came out in the early 90s, holy shit, man. Talk about something that nobody had ever really talked about or really discussed. And if it was all hush hush and it wasn't out in the open, okay? And so, yeah, there were a lot of things that made people uncomfortable and question certain aspects of life. And I think now you can look at this movie with a different sensibility than it was back then, but you also have to, as I've always said to you guys and continue to, the fact that you have to put movies and scenarios within the context of when they were made. And so this is definitely a product of that for sure, man. But look, this movie has a lot going for it. First of all, it's well acted. Stephen Ray is a great actor, man, and he really brings a lot of sympathy and pathos to this character that you should instantly hate, but you really care for and want to go on this journey with, man. Miranda Richardson is really great in her small role here as one of the IRA agents and does a really great job. I really like Forrest Whitaker here. For the small role that he's in, you care for him. And even though you're not sure how you feel about him, the way that he acts, you really feel for the circumstances that he unwittingly has put himself in and how really there's no walking away from it. Really care for him. And Jay Davidson really makes this movie for what it is. Their performance and how you care about them and care about the feelings that they're going through with Stephen Ray and that they're missing lover, and then to get the twist and then to still try to wrap your head around the fact that, okay, this person is not who I thought they may be, and to still care for what's going on with them. It takes a really great actor to really pull that off. And Jay Davidson did a great, phenomenal job with this role, man, and deserved the Oscar nomination, deserved all the accolades. And it's weird because they only made 3 films. This actor, Jay Davidson, only made 3. They made this movie, Stargate, and one other sort of indie project, and they dropped off the face of the planet. They're probably doing some regular odd job somewhere in the world, but I think because of the controversy, I think because of a lot of the hatred that Jay probably got, that it was better to just call it quits and be like, hey, I'm out, man. And it's kind of a shame because they're a really good actor in this piece, and the chemistry between Jay and Stephen Ray is really electric. It's on fire. Even when Stephen Ray finds out about the twist and knows, oh my god, you're not exactly who I thought you would be, there's still that chemistry with them that they still care for one another, but it becomes something different. Is it a friendship where he cares for them in a way that is stronger than just your average everyday bromance? Is it something where he could get past this? She still loves him, but he's pulling away, but also can't fully let go. And it's a push and pull. It's a back and forth, man, that I think the movie plays with really well. And I think they balance it where you could easily hate these characters. After what happens and the twists and the turns, it's easy to say, okay, this guy's an asshole, or okay, this person lied to them, whatever. But they ride that line and they ride it pretty well, man. And I really like that. And I like the complications of what war does to a man and walking away from that, and the idea of being confronted with it again within the backdrop of this potential budding relationship and the issues that they're having with one another. I think it's really gripping. And I think it's very well told, very well directed. Neil Jordan, who has made some amazing movies, flicks like Interview with the Vampire and a whole host of other ones, In Dreams. Great director, and really gets the performances and the story and the direction out perfectly. And I think it's just a well-told tale that I was really invested in from start to finish, man. And the twist is ultimately what made this movie being as talked about and as widely known as it was. But I think at the end of the day, the twist's happening regardless. A good movie stands on its own, right? You can have a great twist that nobody sees coming, but the movie could be hot garbage, and you may remember the twist, but ultimately, the movie has to stand on its own 2 feet. And the movie has to survive, good, bad, indifferent, you name it. It needs to end up being a good movie that's going to survive the test of time simply because it's a good story worth telling. And that's what The Crying Game ultimately is, man. And I think The Crying Game now is probably even more relevant today than it was even back in the day. And those are some of the best stories. The idea of a movie that can transcend the time that it was made and still be relevant even in the present day, man. That's not easy to pull off, and I think The Crying Game does it really well, man. And it's worth revisiting. It's worth going back to, and it's worth giving it another chance. And try to wash away the twist and just take it in for the story that it's worth. I know sometimes that's not easy to do when it comes to twists, but I think this is a movie that has a lot going for it. And I think time heals all wounds, and I think certain movies, when all is said and done and the hype is washed away, can it really stand on its own? Can it really still leave an indelible mark and really leave you entertained and glued to the screen and still care for these characters when it's all said and done? And that's what this movie did. Truly, man. And this edition has audio commentary, it has making of, and what I really like about this is that not necessarily new extras necessarily, but they're extras that have been on previous editions that are retrospectives, but were retrospectives like 10 or 15 years after the movie was made. And they go back and they talk to Stephen Ray, they talk to the producers, they talk to the director, and what it was making the movie at the time, and the Academy Awards, and the hype behind it, and the twists and turns, and how people felt, and the death threats that they got. Because they talk about all that stuff in here, man. How they literally were threatened with death by making this movie. And it's a shame because, unfortunately, I hate to say that people are prudes. I hate to say that people have a certain type of bias that basically they can't see past that. And I've always said to you guys that you need to give movies a chance. And sometimes you may be a little bit iffy about the source material. You may not be sure about certain aspects of the film, you name it. But at the end of the day, almost every movie really deserves a chance to be seen, to be appreciated, to be reevaluated, and this movie is no exception to the rule, man. And yes, there may be aspects to it that you're uncomfortable with, and aspects that you're not used to, but that's what good storytelling is about. It's about breaking down those barriers and to give you an opportunity to see a different side of the coin that maybe you never thought of before. And maybe the movie might not exactly solve all the world's problems or your point of view, but maybe for that hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe you can just let that all go and enjoy the movie for what it is. It's not easy, but it is possible. Twists and turns happen all the time in movies. Some better than others, some a little bit more shocking. But at the end of the day, the movie, good or bad, will be remembered. And this one, memorable, to say the least. And that'll do it for the pickups for February 2025. The physical media train keeps on rolling, and these titles, well, unique to say the least. That's for damn sure, man. Always some unique hauls, and this is definitely no exception, man. That is for a damn sure, man. A little bit of Arrow, a little bit of good old Vincent, crowdfunding love, a surprise or two in the mix. Yes! Hey, it's February, baby. What do you expect? Come on, man. Some good old titles worth grabbing. Hopefully you picked up some good stuff as well. Whether it's from the previous year, whether it's from boutique label goodness, things that you picked up at various stores, definitely let me know. I'm curious to know what your finds are. And I appreciate you guys watching the video. This is always well worth it, showing off the monthly hauls and the out and abouts and the movie reviews and the movie hunting, all older videos and newer videos, which hopefully you appreciate. And if you're interested, definitely hit subscribe and become a part of the Film Fan Nation. I really want to thank you guys so much for putting your hard-earned time and your trust in me as somebody that you want to watch, because there's a lot of options on YouTube, and the fact that I'm one of them is just really grateful to me in just many ways. Too many to count, man. And I really, truly just appreciate your support. I honestly do, man. And share it with friends and family and acquaintances, and really get the Film Fan 108 YouTube channel out there to other people who really love physical media and love movies, and hopefully they enjoy how I talk about them and show them off. And spread the love, man, because that's what I kind of like to do with physical media. So, you know, share and share alike. Absolutely, man. And keep up to date with everything I'm doing through Facebook and Blue Sky. I'm not on social media as much anymore, but those are the two places that if you do want to contact me, you can contact me through there, man. But enough about all of that jazz. The pickups were definitely well worth it. The physical media was a flowing, and always some unique and fascinating titles worth adding to the good old collection, man. So I'm gonna catalog these in, and I will see you back next time for a brand new movie haul video. Take care, everybody, and remember, happy hunting.